The city never really sleeps, not even when its streets are drenched in midnight rain. New York gleamed that night, neon lights flickering over rain-streaked windows, as though the city was both crying and laughing inside the penthouse bar of the Walker Hotel. Laughter, music, and glasses clinking blurred into one restless symphony. Ethan Walker sat alone at a reserved corner booth, his tie undone, a half-empty glass of scotch trembling between his fingers. Billionaire heir, business genius. He had been called many things. Tonight, he was just a man abandoned. He could still hear her voice, his ex-fiancée's cool and sharp, telling him she'd fallen in love with someone else. That someone had been one of his own investors. Ethan had money charm, and the kind of face that once graced magazine covers. But none of it had been enough to keep her. He tilted back his drink, the burn of whiskey tearing down his throat. His head was heavy, thoughts spiraling like broken glass in a storm. He wanted to forget. Just forget. And then, in the blur of alcohol and dim light, he noticed her. At first glance, he thought she was a boy. A sharp haircut, pixie short leather jacket, and combat boots. But when she turned, when the light kissed the soft lines of her jaw and the smooth bronze of her skin, Ethan forgot how to breathe. She wasn't conventionally dressed, but her beauty was undeniable. Delicate, yet defiant. She didn't belong in a place like this where men came to flaunt their money and women wore glitter like armor. He didn't know her name. He didn't understand why she was here. He only knew that the void inside him stirred for the first time in months. The hours dissolved. Shots. Laughter. The faint trace of her voice, low, husky, a little guarded, yet pulling him in. He remembered fragments, her leaning against the bar, refusing to give her real name, teasing him for being too stiff, too polished. He remembered the electricity when her hand brushed his, and then, nothing. When Ethan opened his eyes again, sunlight was bleeding through tall windows. His head throbbed, his mouth dry. He groaned, lifting a hand to his temple, but froze when he felt it warmth, weight, a leg draped over his waist. He turned. There she was, the girl with the cropped hair. Her face was turned toward him, lashes casting shadows over her cheeks. Peaceful, vulnerable, too beautiful. Ethan could only stare for a long moment, heart pounding against his ribs. And then the realization struck. Neither wore anything under the sheets. His breath caught. A mixture of shock, desire, and panic flooded through him. He tried to remember, to piece together the night. Had they? Before he could move, she stirred. Her eyes opened, dark and steady, and for a fleeting second he thought she might say something. Instead, she sat up, gathering her clothes in silence. No explanations, no glance backward. When Ethan found his voice, the door had already clicked shut. He stared at the space she'd left behind, her scent lingering on the sheets, his pulse still racing. And then his gaze fell to the pillow, a tiny drop of blood. His stomach twisted. She was untouched before last night. Ethan sank back against the headboard, dragging a hand down his face. Whoever she was, she hadn't even asked for his name. She had walked out as though nothing had happened. And yet to him, nothing about last night felt forgettable. 9 years later, Amara Johnson stood in the middle of a small playground in Brooklyn, her jacket zipped against the early autumn wind. The laughter of children filled the air, pure and unbroken. 3 of them, her triplets. Sarah and Sapphire were chasing each other near the swings, their braids flying. Raphael, stubborn as ever, was climbing the jungle gym, ignoring her calls to be careful. 9 years had passed, yet the memory of that night still haunted her, or rather the mystery of it. She had never meant to drink so much. She had never meant to let her cousins drag her into that hotel, into that blur. And she had never, ever meant to wake up pregnant. Her cousins had called it a joke, a wild mistake. But Amara had known better. They had spiked her drink, whispering that she needed to loosen up, that being a tomboy wasn't normal, that she needed to be fixed. She had been their pawn. She never knew the man's name, never saw his face clearly. All she knew was that one reckless night had given her the only light she had left: her children. Her lips curved faintly as she watched Raphael leap from the jungle gym, his laughter echoing. 9 years old, strong, smart. And though she would never say it out loud, a strange unease pulled at her chest every time she looked at his dimples. He didn't look like her. The twist of fate came on a day she hadn't expected. At a mall in Manhattan, she was buying toys for the triplets. She turned for only a moment, and when she looked back, Raphael was gone. Panic tore through her. She searched her heart, hammering, until she found him cornered by a furious woman whose designer coffee had spilled across her dress. "You stupid child!" the woman snapped, yanking Raphael's ear. "Stop!" Amara's voice cut through the air, sharp and trembling with fury. She pushed forward, pulling her son close. "Touch him again, and you'll regret it." The woman froze. Her heavily lined eyes narrowed, recognition dawning. "Amara Johnson," she sneered. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Gracelyn, her cousin, had ruined her life 9 years ago. The air turned electric. Amara wanted to scream, to demand answers, to strike her. But Raphael was trembling against her side, and rage had to wait. She dragged her son away, whispering comfort, though her mind was already boiling with revenge. And then, like destiny weaving its cruel threads, it happened. A man appeared at the playground weeks later. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the piercing blue of a winter sky. He bent to hand ice cream cones to her daughters, smiling as though he'd known them his entire life. "Thank you, sir," Sarah chirped. "You look like our brother Sapphire," added innocently. The man chuckled, turning just enough for Amara to see his face. Her heart stopped. Because Raphael wasn't wrong. The stranger's dimples, the slope of his brow, and even how he carried himself were all there a mirror. For a moment, Amara couldn't breathe. She had spent 9 years running from shadows, burying that night. But now the past stood in front of her, alive and undeniable. And though she wanted to deny it, though she tried to turn away, she couldn't shake the truth clawing its way into her chest. This man might be the father of her children. Rain pressed against the Manhattan Mall's glass walls, blurring the city's golden glow outside. Inside, Amara sat stiffly on a bench, her daughters clinging to her arms, and Raphael pressed against her side. The echoes of Gracelyn's laughter still stung her ears, the sharp, venomous sound of someone who carried old sins with no remorse. "Mommy, are you okay?" Sarah whispered, her small hand curling into Amara's. Amara forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Don't worry." But she wasn't fine. Her heart was a storm. Gracelyn. Of all the people to run into, why her? Why now? The woman had been part of that night. Amara had known it even before seeing her smirk, that smug reminder of betrayal. Her cousins had always treated her as an outsider, the tomboy who didn't fit their mold of polished femininity. But that night, they hadn't just mocked her. They had destroyed her. And now fate dared to reevaluate, putting them in the same place again. She glanced at Raphael. His ear was still red from where Gracelyn had pinched him. Rage coiled in her chest. They had taken so much from her, but she had built a life out of the ashes. They would not touch her children. Not again. Across the atrium, Ethan Walker stood by the second-floor railing, his gaze locked on the scene below. He hadn't meant to linger at the mall that evening. He had stopped by after a meeting. But the moment his eyes caught the group, time seemed to still. Her. The woman with the cropped hair. the one who had haunted his memory for 9 long years. He watched her kneel to comfort a boy who looked startlingly, achingly familiar. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. Those eyes. That smile was edged with defiance. Even the dimples were his. Ethan's grip tightened around the railing until his knuckles paled. It couldn't be a coincidence. For 9 years he had tried to forget that night, even as the memory clung to him like smoke. For 9 years he had asked himself if it had been real. And now, staring at her and the children, he felt the truth clawing its way into the open. He exhaled slowly, dragging a hand over his jaw. No, he couldn't approach. Not yet. He needed answers first, and answers required patience. But deep down, one thought burned in his chest like wildfire. If those children are mine, I will never let them go. Later that night, Amara couldn't sleep. The apartment in Brooklyn was small, but warm, filled with the sound of her children's steady breathing. She stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the skyline glowing in the distance. Ethan Walker. She hadn't wanted to know his name, but New York made it impossible not to. His face was on billboards, his empire woven into the city's fabric. Hotels, tech ventures, philanthropic foundations. He was everywhere, the billionaire golden boy. And he looked exactly like Raphael. Amara pressed a hand to her chest, trying to calm the relentless pounding of her heart. She didn't want this. She didn't want him. All she needed were her children, the life she had fought to protect. The past belonged in the past. Yet the universe kept throwing him back into her path. The next morning her grandmother called. Amara. Darling. The warm, commanding voice of Evelyn Johnson filled her ear. I had a call from one of my contacts. Your cousins. They're circling again, something about your children. Amara's blood chilled. They wouldn't dare. They've dared before, Evelyn replied sharply. And they will again if you let them. But this time, you're not that frightened girl they once humiliated. You're a mother now. A fighter. If they come for you, we'll make sure they regret it. Tears pricked Amara's eyes. Evelyn had been her fortress, her shield against the cruel side of family. Without her grandmother, she would never have survived the last 9 years. I won't let them touch my kids, Amara whispered, her voice raw. Good, Evelyn said firmly, because if they try, we'll burn every bridge they cling to. Meanwhile, in a sleek penthouse overlooking Central Park, Ethan sat across from his private investigator, a thick folder on the table between them. Her name is Amara Johnson, the investigator said. Raised here in Brooklyn. Mother of triplets age 9. No father listed on the birth certificates. Ethan's chest tightened. Triplets. Background clean. Works at a community center. Devoted to her kids. Keeps a low profile. But the man hesitated. Her cousins on her father's side have quite the record: petty fraud, extortion. Word is they were involved in something shady about a decade ago. Rumors of spiked drinks at a club, but nothing stuck. Ethan's jaw clenched. He didn't need rumors. He already knew. He could see it in how Amara carried herself in the fire behind her eyes, the wall she had built. Something had been taken from her. Something she never should have lost. He shut the folder. Keep digging. Quietly. And I want a DNA test. The investigator nodded, sliding a sealed envelope onto the table. Already ahead of you. A sample from the boy. If you provide yours, we'll know in less than a week. Ethan's heart pounded. He hesitated briefly before pressing his thumb against the consent form. He had spent 9 years haunted by a ghost. If the boy were his son, he wouldn't waste another day. Days bled into nights. Amara tried to carry on as usual school drop-offs, work shifts, late-night dinners at the small kitchen table. But every time Raphael laughed and smiled, just so, the shadow of Ethan Walker loomed closer. She told herself it didn't matter, that Ethan was untouchable, a man of wealth and power, who belonged to a world far from hers. That night had been an accident, a scar. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but meaning had a way of creeping in where it didn't belong. One evening, a sleek black car slowed beside her as she walked home. The window rolled down and her breath caught. Miss Johnson Ethan's voice was smooth, controlled, but laced with something heavier. "May I offer you a ride?" Amara froze. The city's noise dimmed her pulse, thundering in her ears. She wanted to say no, to keep walking. But her resolve faltered when she looked into his eyes. Those piercing blue eyes mirrored in her son. For 9 years, she had lived in shadows. It may be time to face the light. The leather interior smelled faintly of cedar and something darker, his cologne subtle yet sharp. Amara shifted uneasily in the back seat of Ethan Walker's car. Her fingers twisted together in her lap as Manhattan lights streaked past the tinted windows. She had agreed to the ride without quite knowing why. Maybe it was exhaustion after the long day. Perhaps the relentless curiosity she had tried so hard to bury. Or maybe it was something she didn't want to name, something that tightened her chest whenever she met his gaze. Ethan sat across from her in the spacious SUV, not beside her, but close enough that his presence filled the air. He wasn't looking at his phone or watch. He focused entirely on her. It made her skin prickle. "Miss Johnson." He began, his voice even measured. "I didn't mean to startle you earlier. It might be safer than walking in the rain." Amara arched a brow. "Do you offer rides to every stranger you come across in Brooklyn?" A faint smile tugged at his lips. "No, just the ones I can't seem to forget." The words hit harder than she expected. Her pulse skipped. She forced herself to look away out the window, where neon lights blurred into rivers of color. "You don't know me," she said quietly. "I know enough," he countered softly. "Enough to recognize you, even after 9 years." Her breath caught. He remembered. She had convinced herself that the night had been nothing but an accident lost in haze. But here he was, staring at her like the missing puzzle piece he'd been chasing for nearly a decade. Amara straightened her shoulders. "If this is about that night, you should forget it." It meant nothing. Ethan leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. Nothing. His eyes burned into hers. "Do you expect me to believe that?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to insist, to push him away with sharp words the way she always did with people who got too close. But the intensity in his voice stripped away her defenses, leaving her bare. She swallowed hard. It was a mistake. Silence settled between them, heavy and raw. The hum of the car filled the space, the city flashing by in streaks of light. Finally, Ethan spoke, his tone lower, steadier. "Maybe it was, but some mistakes don't fade. Some change everything." Her chest ached. She hated how his words seeped into her bones, echoing the truth she had tried to silence for 9 years. Her children, her life. Everything had changed that night. The driver turned onto a quieter street, the noise of Manhattan fading into the background. Ethan's gaze softened, though the steel beneath it never wavered. "Tell me about them," he said suddenly. She blinked. "About who?" "Your children." Amara stiffened. The instinct to protect surged through her like fire. "Why would you want to know about them?" "Because," he said, his voice unshaken. "I looked into their eyes and saw my reflection." Her breath hitched. Anger flared, anger at him for daring to say it aloud, anger at herself for not being able to deny it altogether. You don't get to say that, she snapped. You don't get to walk into my life, see my children momentarily, and claim them as yours. He didn't flinch. I'm not claiming. I'm asking. I want to know the truth. The truth. The very thing she had run from all these years. Her hands trembled in her lap. The truth is, I don't even know what happened that night. I don't know why I ended up in that room. I know I woke up and my life was never the same. Her voice cracked, the weight of her confession filling the car. She hated admitting it, hated letting him see the cracks in her armor. But once the words began, they wouldn't stop. My cousins drugged me, she whispered, her eyes fixed on the blur of city lights. They thought it was funny. They wanted to teach me a lesson for not being like them, for being different. Ethan's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists. Fury darkened his features, but he stayed silent, letting her continue. I never saw your face, she said, her voice breaking. I never knew your name until the world plastered it on magazine covers. And when I realized, when I saw the resemblance, she shook her head violently. I couldn't let myself believe it. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan leaned back, exhaling slowly, as though wrestling with his own storm. So you raised them alone, he said at last, his voice thick with something she couldn't name. I didn't have a choice, she shot back. No, he said softly. You had courage. The sincerity in his tone cut through her like glass. She looked away, blinking hard, unwilling to let him see the tears burning her eyes. The car slowed, pulling to the curb outside her building in Brooklyn. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick with silver reflections. Amara reached for the door handle, desperate to escape the weight of his gaze. But before she could, Ethan's hand brushed hers, gentle, deliberate. Her breath caught. Amara, he said, his voice low, urgent. I won't pretend to understand everything you've been through, but I do know this. I'm not letting you disappear again. Her heart thundered, the certainty in his words, both terrified and unsettled her. You don't get to decide that, she whispered. Maybe not, he admitted. His eyes burned into hers, steady, unyielding. But if there's even a chance those children are mine, I will fight for them. For you. For all of it. She froze, her hand still on the door. For years she had built walls, convinced herself she didn't need anyone else. But his words cracked something inside her. And though she wanted to slam the door shut on him, part of her wondered what it would be like to finally let someone in. She slipped out of the car without another word, the cool night air rushing against her skin. She didn't look back, didn't dare. But as the car pulled away, she felt his gaze linger like a promise carved into the night. The triplets were asleep inside her apartment, their breaths steady in the quiet room. Amara knelt beside Raphael's bed, brushing a curl from his forehead. He stirred, mumbling in his sleep, and for a fleeting moment, she saw Ethan's features mirrored in his face. Her chest tightened. Who are you, really? She whispered, the question meant for the boy, the man, and herself. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Her pulse spiked. She knew without a doubt who it was. Ethan Walker had found his way into her world, and this time she wasn't sure she could push him out. Meanwhile, Ethan stood by the window in his penthouse, the city glittering beneath him. On the table behind him lay a sealed envelope, freshly delivered. The DNA test. He hadn't opened it yet. He didn't need to. Deep in his bones, he already knew. But when he finally tore the seal and scanned the words, his chest constricted, his breath catching. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Ethan closed his eyes, gripping the paper so tightly it crumpled in his hand. They were his, all three of them. And nothing, not time, anger, or fear, would keep him from them now. The letter lay folded in Ethan's hand, its edges creased from the force of his grip. He had read it twice, 3 times, until the words blurred into something terrifying and exhilarating. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. His children. 3 lives breathing in Brooklyn, carrying pieces of him he had never known existed. 9 years stolen, but no more. The next afternoon, Amara was in the kitchen of her grandmother's townhouse in Harlem. Regal even at 75, Evelyn Johnson sat at the marble counter with a cup of tea, her eyes sharp, despite the softness of her smile. Evelyn said, "You've been restless all morning, child?" Her voice laced with quiet authority. "What is it this time?" Amara kept her hands busy chopping vegetables that didn't need chopping. "Nothing." "Liar," her grandmother replied smoothly. "Is this about the man from the mall?" The knife paused midair. Amara swallowed hard. "He's not just a man, he's Ethan Walker." Recognition flickered across Evelyn's face. The billionaire. Amara nodded reluctantly. "And he thinks he has a claim on my children." Evelyn sipped her tea unshaken. "Do they look like him?" Amara closed her eyes. Too much. For a moment, the silence in the kitchen grew heavy. Then Evelyn leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "You've carried this burden alone for too long. It may be time you stop running." Amara bristled. "Should I let him waltz into our lives after 9 years? After everything?" "No," Evelyn said firmly. "You should demand answers as to why he was there and what he remembers. And most importantly, what he intends to do now." She didn't have to wait long. A sleek black car pulled outside as the autumn sun dipped behind brownstone rooftops that evening. Her heart sank when she saw him step out. Tall, composed, the presence that bent the world around him. Her triplets ran to the door before she could stop them. Tito Sarah squealed, though she'd only seen him once. Children had a way of attaching themselves quickly. Ethan crouched down, his tailored suit wrinkling as he opened his arms. "I brought something," he said, pulling out 3 small paper bags from a high-end bakery. "Chocolate croissants. Don't tell your mom, they're too sweet." Sapphire giggled as she grabbed hers. Raphael lingered cautious, but he didn't pull away when Ethan ruffled his curls. Amara stood frozen in the doorway, torn between fury and something more dangerous, relief. Relief that for once, her children's laughter wasn't shadowed by loss. "You can't just show up here," she hissed when the kids ran inside with their treats. Ethan straightened, his expression steady. "I had to. I know the truth now." Her breath hitched. "What truth, Amara?" He said, his voice low. "They're mine. I had the test done." Raphael. Sarah Sapphire. "They're my children." Her chest constricted, panic clawing up her throat. "You had no right." "I had every right," he interrupted, his eyes blazing. "I lost 9 years, Amara. 9 years. I can never get back. But I will not lose another day." She trembled, torn between anger and fear. Anger at him for barging in, fear of what his presence meant. She had built a world out of ashes, fragile, but hers. Could she risk letting him tear it apart? Dinner was awkward, but Evelyn insisted. If nothing else, she wanted to see the measure of this man who claimed blood ties to her grandchildren. Ethan sat across the long oak table, sleeves rolled up, listening intently as Sarah told a dramatic story about a school play. Sapphire chimed in with corrections, while Raphael remained quieter, studying Ethan with wary eyes. At one point, Sarah blurted out, "Mommy says we don't need a daddy, but I think she's wrong." The room fell silent. Amara nearly dropped her fork. Sarah, Ethan's gaze flicked to her, then softened as he returned to the child. "You have a wonderful mom," he said gently. "She's given you everything. But if you'd let me, I'd like to be here too." Something in his tone, honest, unvarnished, made Evelyn tilt her head thoughtfully. After the meal, when the children had gone upstairs, Evelyn lingered in the parlor with Ethan. Amara stayed in the kitchen pretending to wash dishes, though her ears strained for every word. "You remind me of your father," Evelyn said suddenly. Ethan blinked. "You knew him." "Everyone knew Arthur Walker," she replied with a wry smile. "Men like that leave shadows as much as legacies. Tell me, Mr. Walker, what do you want from Amara?" Ethan hesitated only a moment. The truth, and a chance. For her, for the kids, for all of us. Evelyn studied him, then nodded slowly. "Then you'll have to prove it. Not with money, not with promises, but with time." Later that night, Amara stepped out onto the stoop, wrapping her cardigan tighter against the chill. Ethan was waiting by his car, the street lamp casting sharp lines across his face. "You shouldn't come back," she said flatly, his jaw clenched. "And yet I will." Her heart stuttered. "Why? What do you want from me?" He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "I want what was stolen from me. From you. From them. I want to be their father, Amara. And I want—" He paused, his gaze locking with hers. "To know if there's still room in your heart for me." The world tilted. Her pulse thundered. She imagined it for a moment, the safety of his arms, the warmth of family, the end of loneliness. But then the memory of her cousin's cruelty sliced through the vision like glass. The humiliation, the betrayal, the terror. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You're asking for something I can't give." He searched her face, but she turned away, retreating into the house. The door closed softly behind her, leaving Ethan alone in the cold night. From across the street, a shadow lingered by the corner of a brick building, cigarette smoke curling into the darkness. A woman's voice, sharp and mocking, broke the silence. "Well, well, it looks like little Amara is not hiding anymore." Graceland flicked the cigarette to the ground, crushing it beneath her heel. She pulled out her phone, her lips curling into a smile that promised nothing good. "Let's see how much more we can ruin her." The mornings in Harlem had always been noisy delivery trucks, rattling down the avenue, children shouting on their way to school, the faint hum of gospel music spilling from corner stores. Amara had learned to take comfort in the chaos, to blend her life into the city's rhythm. But this morning felt different. Standing at the stove flipping pancakes, she heard laughter drifting in from the dining room. Not just the triplets. A deeper, warmer laugh threaded through theirs. Ethan. She glanced through the doorway. He was seated at the table, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly disheveled, as if he had arrived too early and hadn't bothered with perfection. Sarah was handing him a plate, and she insisted he taste test it, while Sapphire leaned against his shoulder, chattering about a school project. Raphael sat opposite, pretending indifference, but Amara could see how his eyes lingered, half suspicious, half curious. Her chest tightened. They were already letting him in. She turned back to the stove, pressing the spatula too hard against the pan. She had long fought to protect them from chaos, from men who made promises and left only scars. Now, here was Ethan Walker's storm, and sunlight combined, planting roots in her kitchen like he belonged. After breakfast, Ethan offered to walk the kids to school. Amara almost refused, but the sparkle in Sarah's eyes stopped her. "Please, Mommy." "Just today." Reluctantly, she agreed, watching from the stoop as they skipped ahead, Ethan's long strides easily keeping pace. They looked like a family for a moment, his hand resting lightly on Raphael's shoulder, the twins holding each other's hands. Something deep inside her ached. When they returned, Ethan lingered by the stoop. "They're incredible kids," he said softly. "They're mine," Amara replied quickly, the edge in her voice sharper than she intended. He didn't flinch. Instead, he met her gaze with a steadiness that unsettled her. And now, they're ours. Her breath caught. She wanted to argue, to slam the door between them, but the word ours had already seeped into her bloodstream, dangerous and sweet. That evening, Evelyn pulled Amara aside in the parlor, her voice low but firm. "You're fighting a war inside yourself," the older woman said. "And while you hesitate, the children are already choosing." Amara clenched her fists. They don't know what they're choosing. They see someone who buys them croissants and walks them to school. "And what do you see?" Evelyn asked sharply. Amara faltered. What did she see? A man who carried guilt like armor, who looked at her children with awe instead of entitlement. A man whose presence filled her house with a warmth she had denied herself for years. She shook her head. "I see danger. I know the past is clawing its way back." Evelyn sighed, her gaze softening. "Perhaps. But sometimes the past returns not to break us, but to give us another chance." Meanwhile, across the city, in a dimly lit apartment that smelled of smoke and cheap perfume, Gracelyn sat hunched over her phone. The screen glowed with images she had taken from a distance: Amara stepping out of Ethan's car, the children laughing with him outside the school gates. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "Look at you, cousin," she muttered. "All cozy with the billionaire. But let's see how long that lasts." She tapped a number, waiting until a gruff voice answered. "I have a job for you," she said. "And it involves her children." The following weekend, Ethan invited Amara and the Triplets to Central Park. At first, she refused, but the children's excitement wore down her resolve. The autumn air was crisp, the leaves golden, and for a brief time, Amara let herself breathe. Ethan tossed a football with Raphael, his laughter booming as the boy tried to outmaneuver him. Sarah and Sapphire twirled near the fountain, their giggles ringing like bells. Amara sat on the bench, watching her heart a battlefield. When Ethan finally joined her, cheeks flushed, he dropped onto the bench with a grin. "He's fast. Gets it from me clearly." She rolled her eyes, but couldn't suppress a smile. Or maybe from me. For a moment, the air between them softened. His hand brushed hers on the benchlight as a whisper. She didn't pull away. "You don't have to do this alone anymore," he said quietly. The words pierced deeper than she wanted. She turned her face toward the children, blinking back the sting of tears. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I intend to keep them," he said. Her pulse stumbled. For the first time in years, she wanted to believe someone, and that terrified her more than anything. That night, as the Triplets slept, and the house fell silent, Amara stood by the window. Her reflection in the glass looked tired, conflicted. She pressed her palm against the cool pane. For so long she had carried everything alone: the weight of betrayal, the responsibility of motherhood, the fear of her past. But Ethan's presence was unraveling the walls she had built stone by stone. Could she let him in without losing herself? Behind her, her phone buzzed. She picked it up, expecting a reminder from work or a message from Evelyn. Instead, the screen displayed a single line from an unknown number. "Careful, Amara. You can't protect them forever." Her stomach dropped. She rushed upstairs, checking the children's room. All three were safe, curled beneath their blankets, their breaths soft and steady. Relief washed through her, but dread followed quickly. Someone was watching. At that very moment, down the block, a car idled in the shadows. Gracelyn lit another cigarette inside, exhaling smoke into the cool night air. Beside her sat a man with cold eyes and steady hands. "Tomorrow," she said, her smile cruel. "We'll make her remember who really holds the power." The man nodded once, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel. The city outside pulsed with life, oblivious to the storm brewing in its veins. And in her quiet Harlem townhouse, Amara lay awake, her arms wrapped tightly around her children, whispering silent prayers into the dark. For the first time in years, she wasn't only afraid of her past, she was afraid of her future. The chill of late October clung to the Harlem air seeping through the cracks of Amara's townhouse. She stood in her children's room doorway, watching their chests' rhythmic rise and fall as they slept. The text message from the night before still burned in her mind. "Careful, Amara. You can't protect them forever." Her fingers tightened around the doorframe. She had lived with fear for years, but it was different now. This wasn't just the weight of memory. It was a present danger creeping closer, daring her to slip. Downstairs, the low hum of conversation drifted from the kitchen. Evelyn had insisted that Ethan stay the night in the guest room, arguing that the children would sleep more easily with him nearby. Amara wasn't sure if it was true, or if her grandmother had grown tired of her stubborn walls. She descended the stairs quietly, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. Ethan was at the counter, sleeves rolled up, pouring tea into 2 mugs. He glanced up, blue eyes catching hers in the dim light. "You should try to rest," he said softly. "I can't." He slid a mug toward her. "Then at least drink." She hesitated before accepting. The steam curled between them, carrying a faint scent of chamomile. The kitchen felt too small for a moment. The silence between them, weighted with everything unspoken. Finally, she broke it. "Someone's watching us." His jaw tightened. "You got another message?" She nodded. "They know where we are. They know about the kids." Ethan set his mug down with deliberate calm. "Then let me protect you." Her throat tightened. "I don't need—" "Yes, you do." He cut in, not harshly, but with an intensity that silenced her. "Amara, this isn't just about you anymore. It's about them. And I won't stand by while someone threatens my children." The words cracked something inside her. My children. He said it with conviction, as if he had already claimed the role she had guarded so fiercely. Instead of being angry, she felt an ache of longing that she couldn't name. The next morning, life tried to resume its rhythm. The triplets skipped ahead to school, backpacks bouncing, while Amara walked a step behind with Ethan. At the corner, a black SUV slowed, tinted windows rolled down. A man leaned out, smirking. "Cute kids," he drawled before the vehicle sped away. Raphael stiffened instinctively, moving closer to Ethan. Amara's heart lurched. Ethan's arm shot out, protective, pulling the children closer. His gaze followed the SUV until it disappeared around the block, his jaw set like stone. "That wasn't random," he muttered. Amara's pulse thundered. "Gracelyn." Ethan crouched to meet the children's eyes. His voice softened, steady as an anchor. "Listen to me. You run if anyone you don't know tries to talk to you straight to your mother, your grandmother, or me. Understand?" 3 small heads nodded, eyes wide with a seriousness far beyond their years. Amara swallowed hard. She hated this. Hated that danger had seeped into their innocence. She hated that, for once, she wasn't sure if love alone was enough to shield them. That evening, Evelyn gathered them in the parlor. The firelight cast sharp shadows across her dignified face. "I knew this day might come," she said gravely. "Your cousins never could stomach the truth that you survived and built something, despite what they tried to take. Now they see Walker beside you, and their envy has sharpened into something uglier." Amara clenched her fists. "They want to hurt me through my children. Then we make sure they fail," Evelyn declared. "I have resources, connections. We will not be hunted like prey." Ethan leaned forward, voice steady. "I'll double security at the school bodyguards for the house. And I want cameras installed by tomorrow." Amara stiffened. "Bodyguards' cameras. That's not how we live." I don't want the kids growing up in fear. They're already in danger, Ethan countered. This isn't about fear. It's about survival. The firelight flickered, catching the steel in his eyes. Amara looked away, torn between resistance and reluctant agreement. 2 nights later, the storm broke. Amara had taken the children to the community center for a weekend arts event. The building buzzed with music and laughter, a brief oasis of normalcy. Ethan insisted on joining, drawing curious glances from the parents who recognized him, but didn't dare approach. Amara allowed herself to breathe as the triplets painted cardboard castles, until the fire alarm blared. Panic erupted. Smoke began to seep under the doors, thick and acrid. Children cried. Parents shouted, the air filled with chaos. "Stay calm!" Ethan barked, his voice cutting through the panic. He scooped Raphael into his arms, grabbed Sarah's hand, and motioned for Amara to take Sapphire. Together they pushed through the crowd, the exit glowing faintly through the smoke. But as they neared the door, Amara caught sight of a figure slipping away into the shadows outside, a woman with familiar sharp shoulders, a cruel tilt of her chin. Gracelyn. Amara's blood ran cold. This wasn't an accident. They spilled into the night air, coughing, clutching the children. Fire trucks roared in the distance, sirens slicing through the dark. Ethan kept his arm firm around Raphael, his gaze scanning the street with lethal precision. Amara trembled, fury and fear colliding. "She was here," she whispered. "Gracelyn. I saw her." Ethan's jaw hardened. Then it's no longer just a threat. It's a war. His eyes burned with a promise, fierce, unyielding. "And I don't lose wars." Later, after the children had fallen into uneasy sleep, Amara sat in the living room, her body still trembling from the adrenaline. Ethan stood by the window, his silhouette framed by the city's glow. He said, "You can't keep doing this alone." His voice quieter now, almost weary. "Let me carry this with you." Amara closed her eyes. She wanted to say no, to cling to the independence that had been her armor. But tonight had shown her what she feared most. She couldn't protect her children by herself anymore. Her voice broke when she finally spoke. "I don't know if I can trust you." He turned, crossing the room until he stood before her. His hand hovered near hers, not touching, just close enough for warmth to seep through. "Then let me earn it," he whispered. Her heart ached, and for the first time she didn't pull away. Across town, in a smoky back room of a nightclub, Gracelyn poured herself a glass of whiskey. "You failed," a cold male voice snapped from the shadows. "I rattled them," she retorted, smirking. "That's just the beginning." The man stepped into the light, his features sharp, unfamiliar, yet commanding. He wasn't family. He was something worse, a rival with power, money, and vendettas. "See that you don't disappoint again," he warned. "Because this time, it's not just about jealousy. It's about making them bleed." Gracelyn lifted her glass, her smile sharp as glass. "Don't worry. I know exactly where to cut." The sirens from the fire 2 nights ago still echoed in Amara's ears. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the smoke curling toward the community center ceiling, her children's terrified faces, and Gracelyn's sharp silhouette vanishing into the dark. Sleep had become impossible. She found herself in the kitchen at dawn, staring blankly at the kettle as it hissed on the stove. Her reflection in the window looked hollow, worn, thin. Behind her, footsteps padded softly. Ethan entered, already dressed, his hair damp from an early shower. He didn't ask if she'd slept. He could see the answer. She murmured, gripping the counter. "You shouldn't be here this early." He moved closer, his presence steady as a mountain. "Where else would I be?" The words wrapped around her like a promise she hadn't requested but secretly needed. Later that morning, he drove the triplets to school in his sleek black car. Raphael sat proudly in the front seat, fiddling with the buttons, while Sarah and Sapphire chattered in the back. Amara rode beside them, tense, her fingers knotted together in her lap. Halfway there, Sarah leaned forward, eyes sparkling. "Mommy, can we call him Dad now?" The question hung in the air like a firecracker. Amara's breath caught, but Ethan's voice filled the silence before she could answer. Calm, careful. "Not yet, sweetheart," he said, gently glancing at Amara. "That's something only your mom can decide." The twins pouted while Raphael studied Ethan's face as if searching for cracks. Amara turned her gaze to the window, her heart hammering. How could something so simple hurt so much? That evening, Evelyn summoned them both to the study. The older woman's silver hair caught the lamplight, her eyes sharp as ever. Evelyn said, "You've seen what she's capable of." Voice heavy. "Gracelyn is not alone anymore. The man she's working with, he's dangerous, connected money, and ruthlessness, both in abundance. We cannot underestimate him." Amara frowned. "Who is he?" Evelyn hesitated. "His name is Victor Langford, a businessman in appearance, but his empire is built on blood. And if he's sided with Gracelyn, it means he has reason to destroy us." The room fell silent. Finally, Ethan spoke, his tone crisp. "Then we fight fire with fire. I'll put my entire security team on this. Amara, you and the kids will not be left unguarded momentarily." Amara bristled. "I don't want them growing up surrounded by guards like prisoners in their own home." Ethan's gaze softened, but his words carried steel. "And do you want them growing up without a mother? Because that's the risk, if you keep pretending you can handle this alone." Her breath faltered. The truth stung because it was undeniable. The following week blurred into a haze of precautions. Guards shadowed them to school cameras blinked at every corner of the townhouse, and unfamiliar men in suits loitered near the stoop like watchful hawks. At first, the triplets found it exciting, whispering to each other about secret agents. But soon, the novelty wore off. One night, Sarah crawled into Amara's bed, eyes wide. "Mommy," she whispered, "why are bad people after us? Is it because of you?" The question pierced Amara's heart. She pulled her daughter close, stroking her curls. "It's not your fault. None of this is. Some people, they're just cruel. But I promise you, I will never let them hurt you." From the doorway, Ethan's silhouette appeared silent but steady. Sarah noticed him, her little voice soft. "I feel safe when he's here." Amara's throat tightened. She didn't answer. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Amara stepped onto the balcony for air. The city glittered below, alive with 1,000 stories, yet she felt trapped. Ethan joined her, holding 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to her, his fingers brushing hers briefly. He said faintly that you don't have to drink it. "I just thought, maybe you could use a moment to breathe." She hesitated, then accepted. The wine was rich, warm, slipping down like liquid courage. They stood side by side for a long moment, gazes fixed on the skyline. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate being afraid all over again. I worked so hard to build a life to be strong for them. And now it feels like everything is slipping through my hands." Ethan turned his voice low but steady. "You're stronger than you realize. But strength doesn't mean doing it alone. Sometimes it means letting someone stand beside you." Her chest ached. She turned her face toward him, the city's glow softening the sharpness of his features. His eyes searched hers, and for a heartbeat, she let herself lean into that quiet pull between them. But before the moment could deepen, the sharp buzz of her phone shattered the silence. A message flashed on the screen. "You think your guards can save you? Watch the ones you love." Attached was a blurry photo of Raphael taken outside the school gates earlier that day. Amara's blood turned to ice. The next day, the storm broke. It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday outing. Amara reluctantly agreed to let the children visit the library with their grandmother, believing it was safe under heavy security. Ethan insisted on joining, but for once, Amara argued he should rest, and he gave in. The call came 20 minutes later. Screams, chaos, the sharp crack of glass, guards shouting. Evelyn's trembling voice on the other end of the line. Amara, they tried to take Raphael. The world spun. By the time Amara and Ethan arrived, the scene was chaotic. The library's front windows, shattered police swarming children crying in the arms of frantic parents. Inside, Raphael clung to Evelyn, his shirt torn a bruise blooming on his cheek. Sarah and Sapphire sobbed beside him, their small hands clutching his arms, as if refusing to let go. Amara dropped to her knees, pulling them all into her arms, her sobs breaking free. Ethan's hand rested firm on Raphael's shoulder, his face a mask of fury. "Who did this?" he demanded. One of the guards stepped forward, shame heavy in his voice. It was coordinated. 2 men caused a distraction. Another tried to grab the boy. If it weren't for Doña Evelyn. He broke off, guilt swallowing his words. Amara turned to her grandmother, tears streaming. Evelyn's voice shook. They underestimated an older woman's cane. She lifted the sturdy walking stick. Its end splintered from impact. "But they'll be back." Ethan's voice dropped lethal in its calm. "Then we end this before they try again." That night, Amara sat on the edge of her bed, and the children finally fell asleep, her body trembling with exhaustion. Ethan stood in the doorway watching her silently. "You saved him," she whispered. He shook his head. "Your grandmother did. But I should have been there." Her eyes met his, shining with unshed tears. "You can't be everywhere, Ethan. But you were here when it mattered. That's what scares me most." His brow furrowed. "Scares you?" She rose slowly, closing the space between them until only inches remained. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I don't know what terrifies me more, losing them or letting myself need you." For a heartbeat, the world held still. Then Ethan lifted a hand, brushing a tear from her cheek, his touch achingly gentle. "Then let me be what you need," he murmured. Her breath hitched. She didn't move away. Across the city, in a lavish penthouse lined with steel and glass, Gracelyn lifted a glass of champagne, her smile sharp. Beside her, Victor Langford studied the city lights with predatory calm. "She's breaking," Gracelyn said. "I can see it. One more push and she'll shatter." Victor's lips curved into a smile, devoid of warmth. "Then it's time we stop playing games. Next time we don't just scare her." Gracelyn's eyes gleamed. "Next time we take everything." The city pulsed below them, unaware that its glittering skyline would become the backdrop for a war that could burn everything Amara had fought to protect. The townhouse felt different now. Guards at every door, the quiet hum of surveillance cameras, the constant presence of Ethan's security detail. It was as if the home Amara had built, brick by fragile brick, had been transformed into a fortress. The children adjusted quickly, treating the guards like friendly giants. Sarah and Sapphire invented stories about them being undercover superheroes. Raphael, however, remained suspicious, asking Ethan endless questions about weapons tactics and escape routes. Amara, on the other hand, felt suffocated. One evening, she stood by the window watching the city glow like a restless sea. Ethan entered behind her, his voice low. "They're safe tonight," he said. "You can breathe." She didn't turn. "Safe tonight," she echoed. "But what about tomorrow? What about next week?" "They won't stop Ethan." He stepped closer, his reflection appearing beside hers in the glass. "Then, neither will I." The simple certainty in his voice sent a tremor through her. For so long, she had carried fear alone. Standing beside him, she realized it didn't have to be that way. Days passed in a blur of precautions and planning. Ethan worked tirelessly, splitting his time between his company and the townhouse. More than once, Amara caught him in the kitchen late at night, tie-loosened exhaustion shadowing his face, yet still awake, waiting, guarding. One night, she found him asleep on the couch, Raphael curled against his side, like it was the most natural thing in the world. A blanket had slipped from Ethan's shoulders, his arm draped protectively around the boy. Amara froze in the doorway, her heart aching. She had seen men hold power and wield wealth like a weapon, but she had never seen a man carry tenderness like armor. She whispered almost to herself, "You'll break me if I let you." But she didn't wake him. Meanwhile, across town, Victor Langford sat in his high-rise office. The city sprawled beneath him like a conquered kingdom. Gracelyn lounged on the leather couch, her smile sharp as a blade. The failed abduction only made her cling tighter to him, Victor remarked, sipping his scotch. Not ideal. We need cracks, not unity. Gracelyn's eyes gleamed. Then we attack differently, not just with fear, with shame, with ruin. He's a man with a reputation, a family name to protect. What happens when she realizes her savior is also her downfall? Victor's smile was cruel. Then she will run. And when she runs, she'll fall straight into our hands. 2 weeks later, the storm broke. It began subtly. Headlines splashed across the morning papers. Walker Industries accused of fraud. News anchors recited allegations of embezzlement, shady partnerships, and secret accounts. Amara's phone buzzed with messages. Friends, colleagues, even church members asking if the rumors were true. The whispers grew louder, sharper. She trusted a criminal. She let him near her children. Ethan stood at the center of the storm, calm but unyielding. He explained it plainly in the parlor, surrounded by legal documents. "It's fabricated," he said. "Langford has power in the press. He planted this, but I'll dismantle it piece by piece." Amara folded her arms, her voice tight. "And while you're busy clearing your name, what happens to us? To the kids?" His gaze softened. "You think I'd let them suffer because of me, Amara? I will burn every lie to the ground before I let it touch you." The fire in his voice unsettled her, not because she doubted him, but because she wanted to believe him too much. That night, unable to sleep, Amara stepped into the garden. The air was sharp with autumn, the city's hum muted under the weight of her thoughts. Ethan followed, his jacket draped loosely over his shoulders. "You shouldn't be alone out here," she exhaled. "I'm always alone, Ethan, even when I'm not." He studied her momentarily, then slipped off his jacket and gently placed it around her shoulders. His hands lingered there, steady, warm. "You don't have to be," he whispered. Her breath trembled. She turned, meeting his gaze. She saw wealth or power in his eyes, but something rarer, devotion carved from regret, a longing to be worthy. And before she could second-guess herself, she closed the space between them. Their lips met, soft at first, then deeper, like a dam breaking after years of silence. When they finally pulled apart, her voice was barely a breath. "I don't know how to do this." His forehead rested against hers. "Then we learned together." For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope, but hope, like light, drew shadows. 2 nights later, the power went out as the triplets played in the living room, and Evelyn supervised from her chair. The house plunged into darkness. Mommy Sapphire's voice trembled. "Stay calm," Amara whispered, gathering them close. A sharp crack echoed outside, the sound of gunfire. Guards shouted, chaos exploding in the night. Ethan burst into the room, gun drawn, his face a mask of fury. "They're here!" The children clung to Amara, their eyes wide with terror. Evelyn rose, cane steady, despite the shaking in her hands. Ethan's voice cut through the panic, commanding and fierce. "Safe room, now!" The guards ushered Evelyn and the children toward the reinforced basement, but Amara hesitated, clutching Ethan's sleeve. "You can't face them alone," she whispered. His eyes burned into hers. "I have to. For you. For them." Her heart pounded. "Then I'm not leaving you." For a moment time held still. The woman who had built iron walls around her heart was choosing to stand beside him, even in the line of fire. Ethan's hand tightened over hers, his jaw set. "Then we fight together." Bullets cracked against the windows. Shadows moved outside. Victor's men had come to make good on his promise. Amara's pulse thundered fear, mingling with something fiercer. For years, she had fought alone. But tonight, as she stood shoulder to shoulder with Ethan, she realized she wasn't just protecting her children anymore. She was protecting the family they were becoming, and she would not let anyone take it away. The night roared with chaos. Bullets shattered glass. The alarms wailed, and the townhouse that had once been Amara's sanctuary turned into a battleground. Ethan pulled Amara against the wall, shielding her with his body, as shards rained onto the hardwood. His voice was firm, unshakable. "Stay low. Don't let go of me." She nodded, her pulse hammering in her throat. Somewhere below, the triplets cried Evelyn's voice, urging them toward the reinforced safe room. Each sound was a knife twisting in Amara's chest. "I need to get to them," she whispered. "You will." Ethan promised, eyes blazing. "But first we survive this." The first intruder burst through the side door, masked and armed. Ethan fired once, precisely dropping him instantly. Another man followed, but Amara, heart pounding, grabbed the nearest heavy vase and hurled it. It crashed against his arm, knocking the gun loose just long enough for Ethan to disarm him. Breathless, Amara stared at her shaking hands. Ethan glanced at her, pride flickering in his eyes even amid the storm. "Remind me never to underestimate you," he said. A weak laugh escaped her lips, trembling on the edge of hysteria. "You already did." They moved through the house together, step by step, until they reached the basement door. Guards had clustered there, ushering Evelyn and the children inside. "Go," Ethan urged. But Amara shook her head, refusing. "I won't leave you." Before Ethan could argue, a voice cut through the chaos. A voice laced with venomous delight. "Well, isn't this touching?" Amara's blood turned cold. She knew that voice. From the shadows of the foyer, Gracelyn stepped forward, her smile sharp as a knife. She was dressed elegantly, absurdly out of place amid the gunfire, her eyes gleaming with cruelty. "Cousin," she drawled, "how brave of you to play house with your little billionaire." Amara's breath shook. "You did this. You put my children in danger." Gracelyn tilted her head. "Danger is relative. You were always the family's shame hiding, pretending you could rewrite who you are. Did you think you'd escape us forever?" Ethan leveled his weapon at her, his voice like ice. "One more word and you'll regret it." But Gracelyn only laughed. "Oh, Ethan Walker, still the hero. But you don't understand. This isn't about you. This is about her, and about the blood that runs through her veins." Amara stiffened. Her veins, her inheritance, the family legacy she had fled years ago. "What do you want?" she demanded. "Everything," Gracelyn hissed. A slow clap echoed from the doorway. Another figure entered, tall, sharp-suited eyes, cold as steel. "Victor Langford." "Ah, Ms. Johnson," he said smoothly, as though greeting an old friend. "I've heard so much about you. Strong, resilient, naive enough to believe you could stand alone. Ethan's gun remained steady. Langford. Victor's smile curved. Walker. I warned you once, every empire has a fault line. Yours was always your heart. His gaze shifted to Amara, lingering. And you, my dear, are both the weapon and the weakness. Amara's stomach churned. Why me? Why us? Victor's voice sharpened. Because your family's land, your mother's fortune, its power. Power you don't even realize you have. And I intend to claim it with or without your cooperation. Gracelyn stepped closer, her eyes burning. She'll never cooperate. She thinks she's stronger than us. But we'll show her. The standoff hung taut, every breath trembling on the edge of disaster. Then a shot rang out. Not from Ethan, not from Langford, from upstairs. The sound drew both sides into momentary confusion. One of Langford's men stumbled into view, blood blooming across his chest before collapsing. Behind him, Evelyn descended the staircase, her cane steady in one hand, a small pistol in the other. Touch my granddaughter again, Evelyn said coldly, and you'll learn what absolute ruin feels like. The room froze. Even Gracelyn faltered, her smirk slipping. Amara's heart swelled, torn between terror and awe. Her grandmother, fierce, unyielding, stood like a sentinel against the storm. Victor's eyes narrowed. Impressive. But you can't win this war with sentiment. Ethan seized the moment, lunging forward. Gunfire erupted, chaos exploding once more. Amara dropped low, pulling Evelyn back toward cover, while Ethan and the guards fought fiercely against Victor's men. Gracelyn shrieked, rage cutting through the air. This isn't over, Amara. You'll lose everything you always do. But for the first time, Amara didn't cower. She met her cousin's venom with fire. Not this time. The fight stretched on, relentless. But little by little, Victor's men faltered, forced back by Ethan's precision and the guards' discipline. Finally, Victor raised a hand, signaling retreat. His voice was calm, almost amused. Very well. Consider this the opening act. But remember, empires don't fall in one night. They crumble piece by piece. And I'll be there to watch yours burn. He slipped into the shadows, his men dragging Gracelyn with them as she thrashed and screamed. And just like that, silence fell. When the last intruder fled, Amara collapsed onto the couch, trembling. Ethan crouched before her, his hands gripping hers, steady and warm. You're safe, he whispered. Her voice cracked. For how long? He lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. As long as I breathed. Tears spilled freely, then not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of everything she had carried alone. And at that moment, she let herself lean into him, not as a shield, but as a partner. Later, as the children slept soundly in the safe room, and Evelyn rested upstairs, Amara and Ethan sat in the dim glow of the kitchen. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only raw truth between them. Amara admitted softly that I don't know how to fight people like them. You don't have to, Ethan replied. That's what I'm here for. But I can't do it if you keep pushing me away. Her chest tightened. I've spent my whole life learning not to need anyone, because needing means losing. And losing. Her voice broke. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. Needing doesn't mean weakness, Amara. It means trust. And I swear to you, I won't be another loss. Her heart trembled. For the first time, she wanted to believe it. But even as dawn broke, painting the city in fragile gold, Amara knew the battle was far from over. Gracelyn's hatred burned hotter than ever. Victor Langford's hunger for power had only just begun. And yet, for the first time, Amara wasn't facing it alone. With Ethan beside her, with her grandmother's fierce love, with her children's laughter still echoing through the halls, she felt something more substantial than fear stirring inside her. Resolve. The storm had come, but so had love, and she would wield both like weapons. The days after the attack passed in a blur of tension. The townhouse had survived, but Amara knew the war wasn't over. Every time she walked through the hallways, the echo of shattering glass and gunfire seemed to linger. Yet something else lingered too, the memory of Ethan's steady hands on hers, his promise spoken like a vow. As long as I'm breathing. For the first time, she believed him. News broke across the city. Walker Industries cleared of fraud. The lies Victor had spun unraveled quickly under Ethan's legal strike, exposing corruption in Langford's empire. But with exposure came danger. Ethan warned one evening that they would strike harder now, spreading documents across the dining table. Victor won't go quietly. And Gracelyn, she's cornered, which makes her reckless. Amara stood at the window watching the triplets play in the garden under Evelyn's watchful eye. Then, we end this. No more hiding. No more waiting for them to come to us. Ethan looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. You mean, yes, Amara said firmly. We take the fight to them. Evelyn found the leverage hidden records from decades past, detailing how Victor had stolen lands, manipulated contracts, and buried rivals. Among them was proof that Gracelyn had forged documents to cut Amara from her rightful inheritance. Armed with evidence, Ethan and Amara set a trap. They invited Victor and Gracelyn under the guise of negotiation, choosing a neutral ground, an abandoned theater downtown. Its velvet curtains faded, but its grandeur intact. The night of the meeting, the city outside buzzed, unaware of the storm about to break inside. Amara entered first, her step steady, despite the tremor in her heart. Ethan walked beside her, his presence a shield. Victor emerged from the shadows immaculate in a tailored suit, his smile sharp. Gracelyn followed, her eyes glittering with hatred. You've grown bold, Victor remarked, inviting me here. Do you think a stack of papers can topple an empire? Amara's voice rang clear, cutting through the cavernous room. Not papers, truth. And the truth is stronger than your lies. Gracelyn laughed bitterly. Truth won't protect you, cousin. You'll always be the shame of this family. Amara's spine straightened, fire blazing in her eyes. No, I'm their redemption. The confrontation erupted into chaos. Victor's men surged forward, but Ethan's guards intercepted the theater, filled with echoes of shouts, the clash of fists, the metallic crack of weapons. Amara found herself face to face with Gracelyn, no longer shielded by anyone. Gracelyn sneered, lunging. You should have stayed hidden. You'll never belong. Amara dodged, her voice shaking but fierce. I belong with my children, with the family I've built, not the one that tried to destroy me. Gracelyn struck again, but Amara pushed back with every ounce of strength born from years of survival. Finally, she pinned her cousin against the stage, breath ragged. Amara whispered that you lost the moment you tried to take them from me. Nearby, Ethan confronted Victor. Fists flew, but Victor faltered when Ethan slammed the evidence onto the stage. It's over. Your empire is collapsing, and this time, no amount of blood will save you. Police sirens wailed outside. Evelyn had called them, ensuring no one walked free from this night. Gracelyn screamed as officers restrained her. Victor's mask of composure cracked, fury twisting his face. You think love will save you? He spat at Amara and Ethan. Amara stood tall, her hand slipping into Ethan's. It already has. Weeks later, peace slowly returned. Victor and Gracelyn faced trial, their names dragged through the very mud they had once used to bury others. The townhouse no longer felt like a fortress, but a home again. Guards still lingered, but the fear had eased. The laughter of the triplets filled every corner, stitching life back into the walls. One evening, Ethan knelt before Amara under the garden's soft glow of fairy lights. The children gasped. Evelyn smiled knowingly, and Amara's heart leapt into her throat. Amara Johnson. Ethan said, his voice steady, but his eyes shining. I lost you once because of lies and betrayal. I won't lose you again. Will you marry me, and let us finally build the life we were denied? Tears blurred her vision. She thought of the battles fought, the scars carried, the love that had bloomed in the ashes. And with a trembling smile, she whispered, yes. The triplets cheered, tumbling into Ethan's arms, calling him daddy without hesitation. For the first time, Amara let herself believe in forever. The wedding was intimate, held in a small chapel overlooking the Hudson River. Evelyn walked Amara down the aisle, tears gleaming in her proud eyes. The children scattered petals, their laughter echoing against the stained glass. When Ethan and Amara exchanged vows, it wasn't just a promise of love, a vow of survival and family, and never again standing alone in the storm. And as they kissed, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light over the new chapter of their lives. Love had not erased the pain. It had not undone the scars. But it had given them strength to fight, courage to heal, and hope to build something new. This is more than a story of romance. It is a story of survival, family, and choosing love, even when the world tries to tear it apart. If this journey touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share this story. Comment your thoughts. Subscribe to follow more tales where love conquers betrayal and hope shines even in the darkest battles. Because in the end, love always wins.